What if Joel didn't decide to save the life of Ellie during the final mission of the first Last of Us game? And the main reason I ask this is because when you really think about it, there is so many negative things that happen to Joel in his life because of his decision to save her. I mean, not only does he lose his life because of it at the hands of Abby, it essentially causes the downfall of an entire power being the Firefly, and it ruins his relationship with his adopted daughter, as well as the rest of the characters in the Last of Us universe looking at Joel as if he is some kind of monster. Instead of debating whether or not Joel made the right decision in this video, we're simply going to talk about a scenario in which Joel just simply decides to leave Ellie in the hospital. So make sure you leave a like on this video and follow for daily nerd and The Last of Us content. For starters, in this what if, Joel is obviously going to wake up after being knocked out by the Firefly and then told by Marlene that in order to create a cure to vaccinate the zombie cordyceps fungus from the world, they're going to have to remove Ellie's brain. And in this version, Joel will be much more of the smuggler for Ellie that he was originally intended to be, and will be much less emotionally connected to her, and thus he will simply decide to leave the hospital. So the first major change here is that Ellie is not going to be arriving at Jackson with Joel, and he will simply be traveling back to Jackson by himself. And the second major change here is that instead of Joel killing Abby's father, Jerry is actually going to be the one that ends up unaliving Ellie in this version, which obviously sucks for a lot of reasons, with the main one being that Ellie is going to get her life taken by somebody named Jerry. But there's also the fact that Jerry was simply not a regular scientist, in the sense he really didn't have any idea of what to do with the cordyceps on Ellie's brain, regardless of whether he had it physically or not. So after he unalives Ellie and takes out her cordyceps, he's not even going to know how to reverse engineer a vaccine with it. But for the sake of the video, let's say that the Fireflies do actually manage to create a vaccine and thus are able to cure the zombie fungus because of the sacrifice of Ellie. If this was actually something that was successfully able to be done, the very first thing that would happen is that the Fireflies would use it to become a global power and use the cure as a means of power in order to control and manipulate the rest of the country and the planet. And depending on how successful they are with this, they could definitely bring back the economy, or at the very least some other form of capitalism, and they may even be able to bring back a structured society to the parts where the Fireflies are able to manufacture and mass produce cures. This could lead to the creation of several different Fireflies communities that are several thousands of members strong, beginning to pop up all over the US. And eventually at some point, I believe we would see the Fireflies become a major global power if they were actually able to manufacture a cure. Also, in this version of the timeline, Marlene would never die, which means that it would be much easier for her to be able to lead and manipulate the Fireflies regardless of where the groups end up. So yeah, definitely expect to see much more Fireflies in The Last of Us Part 2 if Joel actually decided to leave Ellie in the hospital that day. And I don't know about y'all, but the Fireflies were incredibly annoying in the first game. I mean, so were the Fedra agents, and we know that Fedra pretty much wiped out the Fireflies almost at the start of the first chapter of the game. However, I do want to learn more about the lore of the Fireflies and their motivations, as well as the plans they would have with the cure if they were able to manufacture it. So I'm not gonna lie, I would definitely have loved to see this actually play out in the game. But one major component that I feel like no one is actually discussing when it comes to this what if is the psyche of Joel after losing his second daughter, Ellie, because this version of Joel is obviously going to be much darker than the one that we ended up with the last time we see him, since despite the cruel decision that Joel made in order to save Ellie's life, he was genuinely becoming a good citizen and reflecting on his actions, and he was very remorseful about them. But ultimately, more than that, he was a genuine good man, and he was just doing the best that he could to protect all the teenage girls that he found in the apocalypse, because of the fact that he wasn't able to protect his own teenage daughter at the start. And there is something so incredibly tragic about that definitely explains his motivations as towards why he didn't want to just let Ellie die on the hospital table. But regardless of that, this version of Joel, after having experienced the loss of his second daughter, is definitely going to be way more cold-hearted than we ever saw him, and he will not save anyone anymore. I feel like this version of Joel wouldn't want to get attached to anybody because he didn't want to get attached to Ellie in the first place because of how much loss he had. So after experiencing losing her, he's definitely either going to be on a complete war rampage against the Fireflies and try to wipe out any of the Fireflies that there were anyways, or he's simply going to go back to Jackson and try his best to live out the rest of his days without getting attached to anyone, so he can just experience a normal life for once, to the best of his ability, even though he is someone who is experiencing so much trauma over the course of decades during the apocalypse. I definitely feel like he would go back to Jackson, but he wouldn't talk to anybody. He might not even tell Tommy exactly what went down. And any and every time he sees something involving the Fireflies, he will immediately be filled with memories of disgust about how they allowed Ellie to lose her life in pursuit of their own personal goal. I could definitely see years of this going by, and maybe you could argue that Joel would still be able to get close to characters like Jesse or Dina, but I don't even know about that. I'm pretty sure if he sees any other kid, he's gonna want to stay as far away as possible from them because of what happens to Ellie in this what if. I mean, just think about the fact that he literally tried to give Ellie away to Tommy because of the fact that he was getting too attached to her and he didn't want to risk the experience of losing another child again. So I definitely don't think he's gonna want to take any other children as his student or under his wing, especially after what happens to Ellie here. I do think at the very least Joel will try to keep something to keep Ellie's memory alive to him, the same way he always wears the broken watch that Sarah gave. So maybe he would keep her pocket knife or just some kind of memento he picks up from Ellie in order to remind him of her. And this also means that Jesse and Dina will probably never break up, which means that JJ would be raised by both of his biological parents. And if Ellie actually unalives on the hospital bed during the first game, that means that the second game will thankfully never happen. It means that Joel would never get his face bashed in by Abby with a golf club. Abby would never come to Jackson with their friends in order to get revenge against Joel, which means that her and her friends would still be alive. This means that Tommy and his wife would never break up, which also means that Tommy will never have to walk with a limp or have one of his eyes taken from him by Abby. We still might get to experience events similar to what played out in the second game through the lens of Joel this time and his pursuit of revenge for what happened to Ellie, which could then lead to Joel trying to infiltrate the Fireflies from the inside and destabilize the entirety of their forces from the inside out, which is something I definitely wouldn't put it past Joel in terms of him doing in order to get revenge for his lost daughter. But either way, some part of me feels like this is exactly what Joel should have allowed to happen at the end because of all the negative consequences that his decisions led for him and Ellie. And don't get me wrong, I definitely would have done the same thing that Joel did, and I would argue that he was in the right every single time. However, when you look at the karma of it and how it actually impacted him, it did him so much worse, especially when you think about the fact that Ellie held a several year-long grudge against Joel for him literally saving her life, solely because of the fact that she had a savior complex and she felt like she was the chosen one and she was supposed to die on the hospital bed in order to save the planet, which is something that is so childish and unrealistic that it is very likely that that is not even what would happen if she had actually given her life. Need I remind you to keep in mind that during the events of the first game, Ellie had no idea that getting the cure from her would cost her life, because she even tells Joel that they can go wherever he wants after they go to the Fireflies, which means she planned on surviving. So it literally makes no sense that she would be upset with Joel for the fact that he was upset with the Fireflies for threatening her life and literally saying they were going to rip her brain out, especially to the point of her holding a several year-long grudge because of it. But regardless, because of the way they took the direction of The Last of Us Part 2, I definitely am starting to wonder what would happen if Joel just decided to let Ellie sit there and just left. But the most obvious change is definitely the fact that Joel would still be alive, and it really sucks that this guy lost his life just because he was trying to protect another little girl who was helpless and defenseless at the time. There is no reason he should experience pain or get points docked away from his character for making the decision that he made at the end of the first game. And I definitely think there was a better way to write his outcome in terms of how his story ends, but definitely leave a comment and let me know how you feel about all this. Do you agree with Joel? Do you think he should have just left Ellie there? Leave a like on the video and make sure you join the Discord if you haven't already. We are just under 1,000 members and we're gonna do a $100 giveaway whenever we hit it again. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel with notifications on so you get notified the next time I upload a video. Follow all my other socials. The links to everything are in the description. Thank you for watching. I love and appreciate you all. Sun God signing out.
I come in clutch like a genie. Don't talk unless you need me. You talk too much, you need it. All of my bitches look like models, she in love with me. When we link, it's flashing lights and cameras, got a blank.